Well, hello there, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, May 9th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we're going to recap all of Monday's games. Mitch Keller threw the first shutout of his career, the first complete game of his career. Dylan Cease continues to struggle. Mason Miller is hurt. We can't have nice things, and much more. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Scott, let's jump right in.
Unbelievable! He's not a cheetah, he's a lion!
He's not a cheetah, he's a lion. That's from the Pirates broadcast a couple of years ago. I figured I'd throw it in there for Mitch Keller, but we'll actually start
Who is it referencing?
You know, Scott, if I gave you 20 guesses on a Pirates player, you wouldn't get it. It's completely random.
I thought it was like a Jose Altuve home run or something, but you said Pirates. So
Pirates. Jacob Stallings hitting a grand slam, a walk-off grand slam off Edwin Diaz a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So completely random. Anywho, why don't you get us started here, Scotty?
All right. Let's talk about Tony Gonsolin, who had his coming out party here against the Brewers. 6 innings, no earned runs. He did allow a 3-run homer to Joey Wiemer, but they were all unearned runs. And he allowed 3 base runners total, just 3 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. So it's good that he went 6 innings, first of all. Got a little more leash here after opening the season on the IL, being limited early on. But it's not just that. It's that his velocity was up 1.5 to 2 miles per hour on everything. So even being stretched out more, Tony Gonsolin brought the heat. He brought the fire in this start against the Brewers and obviously got a great result. Those velocities were very similar to last year's velocities. So it seems like he's back to normal now, Tony Gonsolin. And need I remind you, last year he went 16-1 with a 2.14 ERA, 0.88 whip, 8.2 K per 9. Gosh, those numbers surprised me even, and I was the one reminding you of how good they were. They're probably not going to be that good, but even if he's a 3.14 ERA instead of a 2.14 ERA, which would be considerably worse, it would still be great, right? It would still make Tony Gonsolin basically a must-start pitcher. His career ERA is 2.53, so I don't know. He's good. Get him started again.
Yeah, Tony Gonsolin for sure. This kind of felt like his first real start back, right, Scott, with that velocity up closer to where it was last year. He averaged 93.2 miles per hour on the fastball in this start. And again, he was right around 93 miles per hour last season. So a really good start for Tony Gonsolin here. Of course, he does have, quite an extensive injury history, but, the level of investment that you had to pay for him in drafts was much lower than it was earlier in draft season. So I don't think it's like a sell high kind of situation. If anything, you could probably make the case that it's like a buy high situation on Tony Gonsolin. Speaking of buying high, might be the case for one Mitch Keller, who completes a 4-hit shutout up against the Rockies. 1 walk allowed, 8 strikeouts, 11 swinging strikes on 103 pitches. And he rode the 4-seam fastball in this one, which was up nearly 1 mile per hour. One thing I noticed on Monday's slate of games, Scott, is that it felt like velocity was up across the board for a lot of pitchers. I don't know if it was just the weather being better. Frankly, I don't know what the weather was everywhere else, but it was really nice in New York today. So I was like, I don't know, maybe just everyone was dealing with good weather. And as a result, ticking up a little bit on the pitches. But back to Mitch Keller, the breakout season continues here, Scott. 2.72 ERA, 109 whip, well over a strikeout per inning, 10.2 K per 9. The walks are down this year. The lowest average exit velocity of his career. The FIP, the XFIP, it basically lines up. It's right in the mid to low 3s. Lots to like here with Mitch Keller. My question to you, I know we usually update our rankings. I think you on Tuesdays and me, I kind of do it like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. How far do you see Mitch Keller kind of boosting up those starting pitcher ranks?
Well, let's pull it up here. I will tell you that prior to this podcast, I was writing about sell high pitchers. I kind of felt like I neglected the reading audience with my Graham Ashcraft, sell high on Graham Ashcraft take. So they didn't get to benefit the same way the podcast audience did. But I didn't want them to miss out on other sell high picks at pitcher. And I did not include Mitch Keller as a sell high target. Probably faked you out with that, right? You didn't think that was where I was going, but
you had me a little nervous there.
Well, I like, he still makes me uneasy, but it's just hard to find anything in the data to point to say, aha, this is what's going to cause him to. This is why he's overachieving. He's going to fall apart because of this. Like, everything lines, as you already outlined, everything lines up. Everything supports itself, basically, in the data for Mitch Keller. I still think pitching for the Pirates is probably not going to be the best thing for him in the long run. But I could move him. I'm seeing how low I have Justin Steele still. There's probably going to have to be a fair amount of rearranging happening here between 35 and 60 for me. Right now, I have Keller 62nd. I could get him in the top 50, probably.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. And last week, I was pretty aggressive in moving both Mitch Keller and Justin Steele up together. I have Keller at 52 and Steele up to 53. And yeah, they probably should be mid 40s ish. You know, guys like Chris Bassett and Charlie Morton. Yeah, I think that's probably where some of those guys are going to settle. Mitch Keller and Justin Steele. So
I did have Justin Steele as one of the sell high pitchers.
Ooh, do you want to elaborate quickly?
I mean, he entered today the third best pitcher in fantasy, and I don't think he can be that good. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, I mean, the fact he's averaging, forget less than a strikeout per inning, he's averaging less than 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. So he's really relying on outlier contact suppression. And I just think that's not a very sticky stat to begin with. It's really difficult to sustain that. And in this particular environment where contact is so damaging, I'm not sure it's a formula for success. Anyway, I feel like the floor is pretty high with Justin Steele, but I think in the long run, he's more of a back end of your fantasy rotation guy than the top 5 pitcher he's been so far. So in a landscape where a pitching starved landscape, somebody who's hurting at there will see those numbers from Steele and probably want to buy in pretty hard. And that's the whole thing, right? When you're selling high, it's not that I want to get rid of this problem child. It's that I want to realize the gains of this asset. I want to sell it at its peak so that if it goes down, I've sold it at its peak. If it doesn't go down, I've sold it at its peak. So I don't even really care what happens to it after that. I just know that I've realized the gains, and that's the whole idea of selling high. And I think people sometimes lose sight of that.
And of course, again, the emphasis on the high part of that, selling high on Justin Steele, not just selling him and saying, oh, I got back a top 100 player. Obviously, you'd want to do better than that, the way that Justin Steele has pitched so far. I'm a little bit more bullish, Scott. I get it. I mean, there will be some regression. He's not going to pitch to a 1.45 ERA or a 0.95 WHIP all season. But, man, like, he is really limiting the hard contact this year. And
he has done it so far to like 90 to like 96th to 98th percentile, right? In terms of average exit velocity and max exit velocity. And so I just think that it's difficult. Like, that's a really high standard to sustain over the season. And even at that level, his xERA is like 3. His expected ERA is like 3, which would be great, but like, he's probably not going to sustain that level. So I'm thinking low to mid 3s ERA for Justin Steele with modest strikeout numbers. Like I said, more of a fill out your rotation kind of guy than a true standout.
Okay. I'm just going to put it out there that I'm a little bit more bullish on Justin Steele. And I think just the Cubs pitchers in general, because they kind of strike me as like, there's usually 1 or 2 teams every year where they sustain a really low BABIP because they have really good defense. And I think the Cubs are going to be that team this year. And we've seen it so far with Marcus Stroman, and we're seeing it with Justin Steele. So I just kind of feel like maybe they're just going to outperform some of their underlying numbers for the rest of the season. This all started with Mitch Keller, who, again, I think will move inside of our top 50 starting pitchers. I want to give an, oh my goodness gracious, shout out to Wilson Contreras, his first game back in Chicago as a member of the Cardinals. Obviously, we spoke about his whole kind of, playing DH moving forward debacle on yesterday's podcast. But, he taunted the crowd a few times there in Chicago. He's having some fun. He went 2 for 4 with a double and 2 RBI in that game. He had a batted ball, 117.5 exit velocity, the hardest of his career. So hopefully this is something that can, help Wilson Contreras get going, because he hasn't been good, but he hasn't necessarily been he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't necessarily been very good either. So hopefully this
I think that was the third hardest hit ball in the majors this year too.
I'm sure it's up there,
It
because
was the only one of the top 4 that didn't result in a homer.
117.5. Yeah, it was a ground ball. So it's like, it was a ground out.
Right.
It didn't really matter for anything. But again, just, seeing that level of max exit velocity.
Okay, so it was the 4th hardest hit ball. The 3 hardest hit balls this year: Matt Olson, Jake Berger, Giancarlo Stanton. All 3 of those were home runs. Wilson Contreras, a ground out. But still, the fact you hit a ball that hard, that's not something everybody can do.
Let's stick in Chicago, Scott, and have this Dylan Cease conversation. What is going on? He goes into the Royals and has another pretty bad start. That is now 4 bad starts in a row for Dylan Cease. He allowed 7 earned runs over 5 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, actually kept the walks down in this one, only 1 walk total, but allowed a lot of hard contact, 10 hard hits, 92.3 mile per hour average exit velocity against. And like the other pitchers we've mentioned so far, the velocity was actually up a little bit for Dylan Cease in this one. On the season, he is up to a 5.58 ERA, a 151 whip, still getting lots of strikeouts. But what has gone wrong? Well, the swinging strike rate is actually down nearly 3 percentage points. The walks are up from 3.8 walks per 9 last year, 4.5 this year. And something that I know if Chris was here, he would point out is, and you already mentioned it for when we were talking about, who was it? Justin Steele, that average exit velocity for a pitcher, it's not really sticky. It's kind of hard to maintain like year over year. And it takes a long time for something like that to kind of normalize for a pitcher. Last year, Dylan Cease was really good at limiting hard contact. This year, it's gone the other way once again. He's all the way up to like 91 mile per hour exit velocity against. The BABIP is up. The home runs are slightly up. It's like everything that you can imagine going wrong for Dylan Cease in the overall numbers. It looks like it is all kind of coming together right now.
Yeah, you mentioned his velocity was up in this start relative to his season averages. But if you compare it to last season, his overall velocities this year are basically down 1 mile per hour from last season. It was better in this start, but overall it's been down on both the fastball and slider, which might correspond to the lower swinging strike rate, considerably lower swinging strike rate, as you mentioned. I can't help but wonder, and obviously there's an implication with this that certain players are skirting the rules or whatever, and so I don't mean to accuse anybody of that without basis for it. But there's supposedly a crackdown of sticky substances this year, unlike ever before, because players kept getting around it. So they keep coming up with new ways to check in the hopes of finally getting a handle on it. And you look at the swinging strike rate being way down for Dylan Cease and Garrett Cole and Corbin Burns and a lot of high-end pitchers. Again, I'm not accusing any one of them of anything, but when there is there seems to be a widespread effect there, you can't help but wonder if it's related to that, especially since when it was immediately enforced. When was that? The summer of 2021, when they first started checking for it, there was at the high ends, the pitchers at the high ends seemed to be the ones who suffered the most from that because their stuff wasn't quite as otherworldly anymore. They weren't separating themselves as much from the pack anymore when they had less grip. And that might explain lapses in control too. I don't know. It's just a theory. But ultimately with Cease, I mean, there are a lot of concerning signs here that, obviously if it lasts all season, it's probably an issue. I think it's too early to assume it's going to last all season. I mean, if somebody's freaking out about Dylan Cease right now, I'd be more likely to buy than sell. But like he's kind of there are a lot of annoying qualities in there. That's why we all had him as a bust candidate coming in, because it just seems like there's a lot that could go wrong with them, as overpowering as his arsenal is, as much strikeout potential as he has. And we're seeing that come into play now. It's probably just a rough patch, but it may not be.
Mm-hmm. Look, if you could buy low, like really low, I guess it's something worth looking into, because obviously we all saw the upside for Dylan Cease last season. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just living in the moment too much, Scott. But I am pretty worried about this. And like you said, we all kind of had him as a bust this year. And I threw something out into the universe, like this could look like a Robbie Ray disaster type season. And it's kind of playing out that way right now, where the walks are up, the hard contact, the home runs, and everything's coming together. And it's just been like a really bad combination so far for Dylan Cease. He's going up against the Astros this weekend. And I think we have to recalibrate our expectations for the Astros offense right now, because if you look at their overall numbers this year, they really haven't been good. So it's not a terrible matchup for Dylan Cease, but I think what he does in that matchup will kind of determine whether or not we want to start him next week when he goes up against the Kansas City Royals once again. Speaking of the Royals, they put up 12 runs in that game on 14 hits. And I had a listener send me this tweet from Dave Holtzman, who works with the Royals TV, and he tweeted out, the Royals have hit an AL most 13 home runs in the month of May. 11 of them, including MJ Melendez's home run on Monday, have traveled over 400 feet, which is the most in baseball during that time. So again, speaking of recalibrating our thoughts, like, all right, this Royals offense is kind of coming around and they're hitting a bunch of home runs. And yeah, so maybe they're not as easy as a matchup as we thought.
I mean, who is an easy? Like, if we can't consider the Royals an easy matchup, then there's no easy matchup. They're 26th in runs scored.
Yeah. I had Tigers fans tweeting at me, Scott, that apparently the Tigers, you can't start pitchers against them either. So.
The Tigers, who are 29th in runs scored, and somebody was saying the same thing about the A's, who are 25th in runs scored. I think it's just that in this offensive environment, there are no sure things. Like, the A's are going to score 10 runs sometimes. The Royals are going to score, how many runs was it tonight? 12?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to happen sometimes. And it's going to happen against good pitchers sometimes. And of course, that was always true. But we're in an even more volatile state here with pitching, with all the rule changes meant to disadvantage pitchers. And so, like, there are no sure things. Maybe emphasize matchups less when you're setting your lineups, just as a general rule. Like, that, I'm not saying ignore them, but when you're going through your criteria of what makes of who to start, who to sit from your pitching options, just maybe put the matchup a little lower in criteria, because they're all volatile.
I appreciate that you're being really rational tonight, Scott. And it's a good balance, because I'm actually kind of trending closer to where you've been in the past couple of weeks, where I'm really frustrated about baseball and fantasy baseball. So, like, you're going back the other way, and now I'm taking your role.
It's over for me. I might as well just put on my analyst hat. No, I mean, like, it's really a stark contrast between my rotisserie leagues and my head-to-head leagues, because my head-to-head leagues are going about like they normally do. I'm pretty competitive in all of them. It's too early to say where I'm going to wind up, but I'm competitive. I'm very much in the thick of things, I think, in all of my head-to-head leagues. But the roto leagues, it's just been a disaster. I'm in last place in several of them, and hopefully I don't stay there. But it's hard to have hope that I'm gonna, at this point, come all the way back and finish first in anything that I've been in last place in all this time. And I don't know exactly. I don't know how to make sense of that. I'm still like, what caused that to happen in that one format type versus the other.
Well, I could tell you exactly what it was, Scott. Do you remember your strategy coming into the season was to wait on pitching, because you thought that it would be more like last year's environment versus this year's environment. And yeah, I mean, like, there's not much great pitching to go around in general, but like, yeah, I guess if you waited on pitching and didn't wind up with like so-called aces, then that probably has something to do with it.
I mean, it may have. I'm not discounting the possibility. You do think of pitching as being a bigger factor in head-to-head points leagues traditionally than roto leagues, but I've always kind of disputed that anyway, because yes, you're starting fewer in a roto league, but there's a higher threshold that needs to be met for a quality roto pitcher versus a quality head-to-head pitcher. A quality start is always going to be really good in a points league, even though it may translate to a 4.50 ERA.
Correct.
Just to give one example. So there is that, but my roto leagues, by and large, it's the hitting. It's the hitting categories where I'm struggling more than the pitching categories.
Well, then I don't know what to tell you, Scott. That was
because I invested pretty heavily in hitting, right?
That was my hypothesis. So
I do wonder if it might be more the issue with rookies letting us down. Like, I invested in a lot of rookies.
That's true. I remember
and
a lot of
you have to go deeper into the hitting pool in a rotisserie league, much deeper. So you can't afford to miss as much on your, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th hitters drafted as you can in a head-to-head league. Like, it's just the fact that you have to fill out more roster spots. And I may have missed on a higher percentage of those because I was, playing by the old standards of, okay, this guy's going to come up and he's going to be as good as he can be basically right away, which wasn't universally true, but it was true much more often than it's been this year and really the past couple years. So I just, my theory right now, and it may be a few factors. I mean, the pitching thing may have something to do with it too, but my theory right now is that I need to be more rigid in how I approach my late round targets in roto leagues where there's less to fall back on the waiver wire.
So higher floor plays, maybe don't gamble as much in those middle rounds is that's our main night take. We'll
just fade rookies in general. Like, not saying don't draft any of them, but maybe only draft one or two, and only if the value is exceptional.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our take so far on the season. We'll keep you updated throughout the rest of the year. Let's get back to the Royals. I talked about how their offense kind of went off in this one against Dylan Cease. Bobby Witt Jr. went 2 for 5 with 2 steals. He's now up to 10 on the season. MJ Melendez went 2 for 5 with his 4th home run. I want to stop there. I have one other name I want to talk about, but MJ Melendez so far, Scott, I know you were not really on this year. I liked him definitely more than you did. He is batting just 208. It's weird because there's like some good and there's definitely some bad. Like, low batting average, the strikeout rate is way up this year. The swinging strike rate also way up this season, hitting lots of fly balls. So fly balls that aren't going out, it's going to lead to a lower BABIP, lower batting average, and strikeouts on top of that explains why MJ Melendez is batting 208. With that being said, when he makes contact, he is hitting the ball extremely hard. 97th percentile in average exit velocity, 88th percentile in barrel rate. What are your early season thoughts on MJ Melendez? And would you be looking to buy him right now?
I mean, I guess if it's a 2-catcher league, I mean, 1-catcher leagues, I'm probably pretty happy with whomever. I'm starting a catcher already, so it just doesn't seem like a high priority. But in 2-catcher leagues, it's more likely his stats go up from here than down. But I do think we're seeing a lot of the same issues he had last year. It was kind of a trendy pick because, a lot of the data look great. The StatCast page looked great for MJ Melendez, but he only hit, 215, something like that. I think he's really damaged by his home park. I mean, you look at his expected home runs by venue, most of them are at 5 or 6 when he only has 3 home runs. So that hurts. And I just think between the strikeouts and the launch angle and everything, he's his own worst enemy with batting average. So I don't I don't feel confident that he's going to meet top 10 upside this year. But in a 2-catcher league, sure, you can probably get him for pretty cheap right now.
The other name I had written down here, Scott, is Nick Pratto, who, former top-ish prospect for the Royals. He definitely had some pedigree. He went 2 for 3 with a double, a walk, and 3 RBI in that game. And he's batting .357 early on, but also comes with a lot of strikeouts and a lot of line drives. So it's definitely a weird kind of approach. You don't really see that very often. Any thoughts on Nick Pratto? Should he be added anywhere?
I am not super optimistic about him. The strikeouts have been a huge issue, both between the majors and the minors. Really, it was just that amazing 2021 breakout season in the minors that that's basically the only reason for enthusiasm with him. And he took a big step back last year. And I need to see a lot more than this to think of him as a fantasy asset beyond like AL only leagues.
All right, fair enough. Let's take our first break. When we return, we got a whole bunch of news and notes to talk about here on Fantasy Baseball Today.
One weekend in May, only the best are welcome. An invitation reserved for legendary players and future stars, challenging each other at one of the most extraordinary courses in the nation. A major moment awaits. The PGA Championship on CBS.
The UEFA Champions League on Paramount Plus is down to the final 4 teams and 2 epic semifinal matchups. Karim Benzema and defending champs Real Madrid take on Erling Haaland and tournament favorite Manchester City in a rematch of last year's thrilling semifinal. Plus, it's a clash of Italian titans as Inter squares off against AC Milan in a battle for City bragging rights. Find out which clubs will reach the ultimate goal in soccer's greatest yearly competition. Stream every Champions League semifinal match live exclusively on Paramount Plus. Try it free at ParamountPlus.com/live sports. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, you can whip out your phone, scan that QR code in the top right corner. That will also take you to the Paramount Plus app where you can sign up for free. All right, Scott, let's talk about some of the news. And of course, the bad news from Monday was that Mason Miller is headed back to the Bay Area to be evaluated after feeling tightness in his right elbow following Sunday's start. Manager Mark Kotze said the initial suspicion is that Miller is dealing with a flexor muscle issue and that they're hoping for the best. So at least we had that great 2-star week last week.
Yeah. I mean, they don't sound terribly optimistic, do they? No. I mean, elbow tightness just in general sounds like it could be a small issue, but they don't sound terribly optimistic. And there were a lot of we hardly knew ye takes on Twitter for Mason Miller. And that's a shame. I mean, if you're in a shallow league and you just picked him up because his roster rate is below 80% still, I think, then it's probably okay to go ahead and swap him out if you need to. In an ideal world, you'd wait to hear exactly what the diagnosis is first, but you may not be able to wait that long. And I'm not that optimistic. And I was not fully sold on Mason Miller as a major fantasy asset anyway, given the team context, given that, I mean, for as good as his stuff is, the strikeouts had been kind of underwhelming so far. I think it's okay to move on if you need to.
Last week really did impress me with Mason Miller. One thing that surprised me was how quick the A's were to push him and push his pitch counts, especially someone who's dealt with injuries in the minor leagues as well. So perhaps that's something that contributed to this. Obviously, he throws like 100 miles per hour, so that's probably something that can't be great for your elbow. Yeah, the news is not looking very good for Mason Miller. Not looking great for Max Scherzer either, Scott, who apparently admitted he's still pitching with discomfort below his right scapula, and he first injured his shoulder last month and had his start pushed back. Of course, he had that 10-game suspension for the sticky substances as well, but he never went on the IL, and I just can't really imagine anything good coming of this, Scott. Scherzer admitting that he's pitching through the shoulder thing. The velocity, the spin rates were down in his most recent start. He got rocked by the Tigers, those pesky Tigers, Scott. So given his age too, like, I'm actually pretty worried about this for Scherzer.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to, when I do my big rankings overhaul tomorrow, I'm going to move him down quite a bit. Still in the top 20, I think. But yeah, I'm worried about it. I imagine he's either going to go on the IL soon, or he's going to injure himself worse and also go on the IL soon. Like either way, it feels like an IL stint is coming.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Yankee fan. I'm like a Mets hater or anything, but man, it's just
Not just that.
How many years in a row, Scott, can we just it just feels like with the Mets, what can go wrong will go wrong every single year. It's look, frankly, I feel bad for them, but what are you going to do? I'm hoping for the best when it comes to Max Scherzer. We had a promotion on Monday, Scott. Christopher Morel promoted by the Cubs, and then turns out he wasn't in the lineup. So not really sure why they promoted him, but he was crushing it in the minors. He hit 330 down there, 11 homers, 31 runs, 31 RBI, 4 steals, and 1155 OPS. Still striking out a lot. 21% roster, has second base and outfield eligibility. Something that might help him get in the lineup is that Nico Hoerner left Monday's game with hamstring tightness. So perhaps that's the opening that Christopher Morel needs here.
Yeah, could be. And he's like, he can play anywhere but catcher. So he could pick up eligibility at more positions than second base and outfield even. Though if he is filling in for Hoerner, obviously that would be second base. I am skeptical of Christopher Morel. It seems like the Cubs are too, given that they sent him back to the minors in the first place and they kept him there for as long as they did, even while he was slashing 330, 425, 730. You can't ask for much better numbers than that, but they left him there that long. They brought him up and didn't put him in the lineup right away, as you said, Frank. You said his strikeout rate was still high in the minors. It was over 30% against minor league pitchers. And that was what ultimately doomed him in the majors last year. Because remember, he came up on fire and he was a popular pickup in fantasy for a few weeks. And then he just cratered and didn't end up playing that much. The longer the season went, the less Christopher Morel played. And I'm not sure anything has changed for him since he's still striking out more than 30% of the time against minor leaguers. 15-team league, maybe even a 12-team roto league, where you have all those lineup spots to fill. Let's say more than 320 players rostered. Christopher Morel's probably worth picking up just in case, because there's a lot of power, there's a lot of speed there, and if he puts it all together, it could be a real prize. But I doubt he's going to.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was thinking. 12-team roto leagues are deeper, where you have the middle infield spot, 5 outfield spots. Like maybe, catches fire a little bit here and gets an opportunity to play, given this recent injury to Nico Hoerner. We'll see what happens with that. Worth pointing out for Morel last year, obviously interesting power and speed. He had 16 home runs and 10 steals in 425 plate appearances, 88th percentile max exit velocity, 88th percentile sprint speed. So there is legitimate power and speed there. Will he make enough contact? That is the question. Other news and notes, Jose Altuve took live batting practice at AAA on Monday. He appears close to starting up a rehab assignment. Corey Seager is expected to begin a rehab assignment this Thursday. Nolan Arenado was scratched due to neck stiffness, and frankly, if that's something he's been playing with, might explain why the numbers look as bad as they do. Luis Ortiz is expected to start for the Pirates on Tuesday, going up against the Rockies. And in 7 starts in the minors this year, a 2.23 ERA, 0.96 whip, 29 strikeouts over 32 and a third innings pitched here, Scott. Big velocity, pretty good breaking pitch as well. Only 10% rostered. Any interest in Luis Ortiz of the Pirates?
I don't think it's a rush out and add him right away situation, but he is interesting. He was, I debated putting him in my preseason top 100 prospects, and it didn't seem like anybody else was. So I feel like I'm higher on him than the consensus, than the prospect community in general. He did, during his time up last year, have a 13.1% swinging strike rate, which is pretty impressive. And he has good ground ball generating skills, which I think is still a good thing. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on is Luis Ortiz, but it's more of a prove it situation, I think, than like when I would say when Brandon Pfaadt was called up, but obviously that didn't go well. Like he's not that same level of prospect though.
Yeah, That is true. And I misspoke recently. I said that Luis Ortiz had RP eligibility on CBS. He does not. It's only starting pitcher eligibility there. Travis d'Arnaud was activated from the 7-day concussion IL on Monday. Interested to see what that does for Marcell Ozuna's playing time moving forward. Alex Wood could return to the Giants rotation later this week. Carlos Carrasco will make a rehab start at AA on Tuesday. Yoan Moncada remains on his rehab assignment at AAA and could be back with the White Sox this weekend. Ramon Laureano left Monday's game after making a great catch in right field. He was later placed in concussion protocol. Chas McCormick was activated by the Astros and was batting 7th in the lineup. J.P. Crawford was scratched with knee discomfort. Jose Suarez was placed on the IL with a left shoulder injury. That means there's a good chance Chase Silseth will take his spot in the rotation. Ryan Yarbrough was placed on the IL after a scary injury on Sunday. He took a line drive off of the face, luckily able to walk off under his own power. So thankfully, it doesn't sound like it could have been a lot worse. I was watching that game. Mason Miller was pitching on the other side. It was pretty scary stuff. So sounds like Ryan Yarbrough, for the most part, is okay. It's good news for him. Scott, a prospect note I wanted to mention to you. There are rumors floating around on the Twitter sphere that the Mets are going to call up prospect Ronnie Mauricio in the coming days. And in 33 games at AAA this season, he was batting .333 with 6 homers, 6 steals, a .951 OPS. And he's always produced big power and speed in the minors. But batting average has usually been lacking for him. Anything we need to know about Mauricio, and would you be looking to add him anywhere?
Deeper leagues. I would say he's less of a priority than Christopher Morel. It would probably be a similar role, kind of a super utility role for the Mets. But there are major plate discipline issues for Ronnie Mauricio. The guy doesn't walk at all. And even though he's had great success at AAA this year, I imagine major leaguers probably be able to exploit that, especially, in his first look in the league. But there is big power there. And if he does find his way into close to everyday at bats, then Ronnie Mauricio might be somebody who has some value.
I'm just trying to figure it out. Can lineup or roster construction wise, how is he going to make it into the Mets lineup right now? I mean, we know he's not playing shortstop. We know he's not playing third base because Brett Beatty's playing there. I guess he could play second and they move Jeff McNeil to like a corner outfield spot, something like that.
It might be a situation where they just move them all over the place and give each of those guys a day off at DH because they have Daniel Vogelbach. I forgot his first name, primarily playing DH and he's not adding much.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a situation where Mauricio is going to play every day, but that super utility role where the guy plays a lot and just kind of gives everybody a day off here and there.
I'm looking at his games played by position in the minors. This is Ronnie Mauricio, a prospect for the Mets we're talking about. He hasn't played in the outfield either. It's just been second base and shortstop. So it kind of just feels like he's a middle infielder. So yeah, my best guess again is like second base and they move.
Well, they were wanting to give him more exposure to positions. I guess that hasn't happened. So I guess, I don't know, surprising that they would choose now to call him up. If that's even true, because you're saying it's a rumor, right?
Yeah, it's not confirmed yet, but I had multiple people tag me in tweets on Monday and different sources. So it seems like there's some smoke there. Ronnie Mauricio, again, that's the name to pay attention to. We'll see what happens.
I do need to give Daniel Vogelbach a little more credit than I just gave him because he only has 2 home runs. So I'm thinking, he's not doing anything. He has reached base at a 398 clip, which is pretty valuable. So maybe they will continue to play him.
Gosh, he is such an interesting player. Anyway, let's get into a few waiver wire hitters. Do any of these names matter for fantasy, Scott? We'll quickly run through some of them. Riley Green, seemingly, since we talked about him, we had that long conversation recently. He's kind of come around. He went 2 for 4 with a double, his 4th steal, and 2 RBI on Monday. He had 2 batted balls over 108 mile per hour exit velocity. And over his last 12 games, he's batting .354, 1 homer, 2 steals, tons of line drives. Also a 64% ground ball rate during that time. He's down to 67% rostered. Scott, does Riley Green matter right now for fantasy?
He is heating up. I don't think he's heating up enough to win me over again yet. And it's kind of the same thing for Ezequiel Tovar of the Rockies, who's also heating up after doing nothing in April. but it's just like it's not quite hot enough. And in Riley Green's case, there's still the issue of all the ground balls. Not quite enough to win me over.
Mm-hmm. What about Joey Wiemer, who went 2 for 3 with a double and his third home run? Batting average is low, but is providing some power and speed. Not hitting the ball hard, lots of ground balls. Does Joey Wiemer matter right now?
Well, it matters that I sat him this week in some of those 5 outfielder leagues where I'd been starting him basically every week. I finally sit him, and he has a 4 RBI game. So thanks for that, Joey Wiemer. Like, I like that his strikeout rate, because strikeouts were the big issue in the minors, and it's been fine. It's been about 22%, I think, which is fine. It's pretty good, actually, for a rookie, especially. But just doesn't seem to be squaring up the ball often enough to do much at the plate. Certainly squared up that home run today. So hopefully that sparks something for Wiemer.
I just checked my lone league where I have Joey Wiemer as well. TGFBI, a 15-team roto league, on the bench in favor of Jesse Winker, who I left in my lineup for some reason. They both haven't been good, but gosh,
it's really hard to fill out a 5-man outfield in those 15-team leagues.
Not
so
great.
hard.
Not great. On the same team, Scott, Tyrone Taylor went 2 for 4 with his second steal. He's 95th percentile in sprint speed. Last year, he hit 17 home runs with 3 steals. Does Tyrone Taylor matter at all?
I'm going to say nah.
Okay. What about Gavin Sheets? He went 1 for 3 with his 4th home run. We know Eloy Jimenez is going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. It's back-to-back games with a home run for Gavin Sheets. What do you think on him?
I don't think much of him either. He has, in 2021, for the time he was up, he looked like he might be a contributor. But the exit velocities aren't that impressive. And I think you'd have to be in a pretty desperate spot to turn to him right now.
This next one is mostly for 1-catcher leagues. He's definitely not available in 2-catcher leagues. Gabriel Moreno went 3 for 3 with an RBI and a steal. He is now batting .318 for the Diamondbacks, but just 1 home run. Still lots of ground balls, lots of line drives, but it's kind of empty batting average, Scott. 47% rostered. Does Gabriel Moreno matter in 1-catcher leagues?
I mean, he's outside the top 12 for me.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure there will be times this year when he matters, when enough catchers are hurt. But right now, I would say in 1-catcher leagues, most 1-catcher leagues, he can probably he can probably be on waivers.
Okay, let's double dip with the Nationals. And Lane Thomas went 3 for 5 and quietly is picking it up. He's now batting .380 on the season with 3 home runs and 3 steals. Joey Meneses went 2 for 4 with a run and RBI. He's batting .283, but just 2 home runs, a .673 OPS. So, like we said with Gabriel Moreno, kind of empty batting average. Scott, do either of those names matter? Lane Thomas, Joey Meneses?
I'm more inclined to say they do because of all the 5 outfielder leagues, but they're pretty low end. They're they're in the same category as Joey Wiemer for me.
Yeah. All right. Let's take our final break, and when we return, some kind of random pitching performances. Tanner Bybee got knocked around by the Tigers. John Gray had his best start of the season. Actually, something really interesting in that start that I want to get to, and we'll talk about it right after this.
Witness one of the world's biggest stars as a family man.
Really?
May 17th.
I just jumped into Stallone.
There's no place like Stallone.
It is about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
He's the last person that wanted to do this show yet. He sees the camera and he's like, am I in frame?
That's the truth.
The Family Stallone, streaming May 17th, exclusively on Paramount+.
Big thank you to those watching us live on YouTube right now. It is past 1 a.m. Eastern time. We've got 500 people watching us live, so we do appreciate you being here. And hit that like button if you haven't already. We really do appreciate it. What do we make of these performances, Scott? We'll kind of just go one by one, little rapid fire. Tanner Bybee knocked around by the Tigers. He gave up 4 earned runs, 7 hits, 4 walks. Just could not command his fastball. I watched a lot of this start. He just really did not have it in this one. Gave up some hard contact as well. What'd you see from Tanner Bybee on Monday?
I mean, I'm going to give him a pass for it, as good as he looked in his first 2 starts. him going from 0 walks in those first 2 outings, which was more in line with his minor league track record, to having 4 walks in this start. It did seem like it was just off. I noticed also his slider in particular got hit hard, and so he was throwing it less. He was throwing more curveballs. So it's interesting to see him incorporate more of his arsenal because he was mainly just fastball, slider in his first 2 outings. But I mean, I don't have any huge takeaways from this. I stand firm with Bybee if you picked him up.
Okay. Nestor Cortez was just okay up against the Oakland A's. He went 5 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, 6 hits and 2 walks. The whip wasn't great in this one, allowed a decent amount of hard contact, 8 hard hits in this one. The ERA all of a sudden, Scott, is up to 4.74, the whip 1.24. And I noticed the fly ball rate, while it was high last year, it's like way high for Nestor Cortez, 65%. He's giving up more home runs. The BABIP is up. So kind of feels like he's getting dinged by this new environment as well. Are you actually worried about Nestor Cortez at all?
A little bit, just because he's such a, I know this will sound unkind, but he's such a gimmicky pitcher that maybe the trick doesn't work anymore. That's what I'd worry about with him. But the data still looks strong. I mean, his expected ERA coming into this start is 3.26.
Yeah.
Even though the actual ERA is close to 5, the quality of contact remains pretty low, pretty favorable for Cortez. The swinging strike rate very similar to last year. The outings have been short and they've been pretty shaky recently, but I'd stand firm with him too.
John Gray just had his best start of the season at the Mariners. 7 innings of 1-run ball, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks, 20 swinging strikes on 89 pitches. And 10 of those came on a slider, which was up 4 miles per hour in this start compared to where it was. He averaged 87.5 miles per hour on a slider, yet the spin rate was down over 100 RPM, Scott. So I can't really explain it. I don't really know what was going on, but it was a tremendous pitch in this one. And that comes after 4 straight starts where John Gray had exactly 2 strikeouts in each of those starts. So
I don't know what got into him.
Yeah.
I don't know what got into him. I don't know what got into the slider. I usually you can find insights on Twitter, whether from a beat writer or some data head who has something to say about it. And I could not find anything about John Gray's slider in this, whether it was being misclassified or what he was doing differently to get it to be up 4 miles per hour. But yeah, he got half of his 20 whiffs on it. And it seems like it'll be a formula for success for him. He's up to 79% rostered already. Mm-hmm. He was one of my sleeper pitchers for this week. I think he got added in a bunch of leagues because he lined up for 2 starts. But if the second start goes anything like this first start, then obviously he's going to be more than just a streamer for you.
Yep. And on the other side of that start, Logan Gilbert actually took a perfect game into the 7th inning and then kind of faltered in that final inning of work. 6 2/3, 2 runs allowed, 10 strikeouts, which was a season high, 12 swinging strikes on 91 pitches. And like the other names we mentioned, the velocity up a little bit across the board here for Logan Gilbert. 3.79 ERA, 0.99 whip on the season, 11.2 K per 9, 1.8 walks per 9. And Scott, if you buy that strikeout to walk ratio for Logan Gilbert, then you can make the case that he's actually a buy high right now. I don't know that he's being valued the way that he should be.
His expected ERA entering this start was 2.86.
Pretty good.
So that suggests also that he's actually underachieved so far.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd go that far, but there's no reason to sell on him. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, a weird stat line for Anthony DeSclafani up against the Nationals, right? Good start. It's against the Nats, right? Nope. You know nothing, Frank Stampfl. 7 innings, 2 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 strikeouts. He gave up all 5 runs in the first and then settled down after that. He gave up 13 hard hits in this one, and obviously is pitching more to contact this year, Scott. I don't know. Any thoughts on Anthony DeSclafani?
Well, it's funny because I thought he was having his Graham Ashcraft moment where I was writing up this article about these pitchers to sell high on, and Anthony DeSclafani was going to be in it. And then he allowed 5 earned runs in the first inning to the Nationals. And it's like, oh, great, I'm going to have to take him out now. But then he was great for the next 6 innings. That was the only damage off of him. And so you look at his numbers for the year, still has a 2.80 ERA, still has a 0.93 whip. So I'm happy that I still get to call him a sell high candidate because I don't think he's actually this good.
Yeah, and if you're trying to figure out how DeSclafani has made it this far with the numbers this good, only 4 walks all season. So I think that's something that's likely to regress moving forward as well. A few leftovers here. We'll point out a few pitching standouts. The studs on the mound on Monday night. Shane McClanahan, Shane O'Mac.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
He was at the Orioles and he threw 6 shutout with 7 strikeouts in that one, 2 earned runs or fewer in all 8 starts this season, a 1.76 ERA, a 1.13 whip for Shane McClanahan. Zach Gallen, another great outing up against the Marlins, 7 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts for him. Scott, anything to add on Shane O'Mac or Zach Gallen?
I mean, McClanahan might be the actual best pitcher in fantasy. I'm not ready to elevate him there in my rankings. I'm going to keep Garrett Cole ahead of him, at least, largely because of durability issues. But in some ways, McClanahan seems to have gotten better from last year, and he was already pretty dang awesome. So kudos if you have him. Zach Gallen, yeah, nice bounce back start. He's having a great year as well. Kudos if you have him. All these kudos.
Yeah, Scott, because guess what? I have neither of those pitchers. I'm guessing you don't either.
Oh, I do. I have McClanahan and Tout Wars, my last place Tout Wars team. And I have Zach Gallen in the podcast listeners league, which is second place. It's a head-to-head points league, so I'm doing well in that one.
All right, a little positivity there. You know, if there was ever a podcast to just present to people as like a ringing endorsement for fantasy baseball today, it's probably not this one. Just us talking about how much we're in last place in fantasy baseball. So
you need a little transparency. We got to keep it real here. We're not a bunch of phonies.
I'm all about it, Scott. I love the transparency. I think
nobody's more upset about this than me. All right.
But you're doing it with a smile on your face today, which I do appreciate.
I can only keep a sourpuss for so long. I mean,
that's right.
It was I've demonstrated my upsettedness for weeks now, and I'm kind of just, it is what it is at this point.
He's over it. Not quite studs, but very useful pitching performances. Freddie Peralta keeps it rolling up against the Dodgers. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts for him, 14 swinging strikes on 94 pitches. And Marcus Stroman now has a quality start in 7 of 8 outings this season up against the Cardinals. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts for him. And he actually changed up the pitch mix a little bit. He leaned into his slurve more in this one. He used it 34% of the time. And if he does that more moving forward, he could wind up with more swinging strikes and more whiffs, and that's exactly what happened in this one. Any thoughts on Peralta or Stroman?
I mean, Stroman, the consistency of the quality start, 7 of 8. He only had, let's see, I looked this up before the show. Stroman last year only had 12 starts where he went 6+ innings, and he already has 7 this year. And that was my big hesitation with him coming into the year, was just that, okay, if this non-strikeout pitcher isn't even going to give you volume, then what's the point? Well, he's been great so far. And I mean, he may be a sell high in the most technical sense, but he's a pretty good pitcher. I wouldn't mind just holding on to him.
Mm-hmm. I made the case earlier in the season that Marcus Stroman is a buy high, and he probably would have to buy a little bit higher now, so I don't know that I'd want to do that. But I'm just going to continue to point out the Cubs pitching staff and their defense, and look at what Drew Smyly has done this year. Like, even Wisniewski not getting whiffs, he's kind of turned it around a little bit. So I'm just a little bit more bullish on those guys. Not really sure what to do with these names, Scott, but they did pitch pretty well on Monday. Kyle Freeland, 7 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts at the Pirates. Kyle Gibson, of course, Scott. I started him. I started him last week up against the Royals, who, again, they've played a little bit better recently. And,
the Royals and the Tigers and
yep. And I dropped Kyle Gibson in my main event league, most important league. I'm like, nope, there's no way, not starting him against Tampa Bay. 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts for Kyle Gibson.
Matchups are irrelevant. That's what we're learning here today.
So frustrating.
No, I wouldn't go that far, but
yeah. And then Jake Irvin, he had a strong start at the Giants, 6 1/3 shutout for 5 strikeouts. For those who aren't aware, he pitches for the Washington Nationals. Scott, anything on those 3? Jake Irvin, Kyle Gibson, and Kyle Freeland.
I mean, we pretty much covered the most interesting angle there with Gibson. I am still not buying into Kyle Freeland in the slightest.
Fair enough. Some hitting leftovers. Esteury Ruiz, another strong game. He went 2 for 5 with a double and his 17th steal. He is now up to a 277 batting average on the season, and he's also up to 75% rostered. So people are listening, Scott, because they're picking him up. Josh Lowe went 1 for 4 with his 7th home run. Willie Adames went 1 for 4 with a 3-run homer. That's back-to-back games with a home run for him. Taylor Ward is coming back around. He had 3 hits on Monday. Over his last 7 games, he's batting .407 with a home run, 6 runs scored, and 5 RBI. And Christian Walker is also hot. He got off to a slow start. He's batting he went 2 for 4 with his 9th home run. And I think I saw the batting average is now up over 280 for Walker.
Yep.
So,
expected stats look similar to last year. The average exit velocity is down a little, but it's been up to last year's standards basically since mid-April for Christian Walker. So he seems to be the real deal. And just a little bit of clarity on Esteury Ruiz. I don't think he's actually that good of a hitter. Like he probably needs to be rostered in most every format at this point, because with all those steals, he's top 15 outfielder in points leagues even. But he has to sustain, what is this, like an 80 steal pace? Which, I mean, maybe he could do. He stole more than 80 bases in the minors last year.
I was going to say, if there's anyone that could do it, it would be him.
Yeah. It's you're counting on him being a Michael Bourne player, which is, at this point, there's probably a lot of people listening who don't even remember what Michael Bourne was like in fantasy, but he stole so many bases that he was a worthy starter even in points leagues, despite not having any power whatsoever. Not nearly as good of a defender as Bourne, but I don't think the A's care much about that.
Yep.
So like, don't put too much faith in Ruiz, but you can't ignore what he's doing either.
I'm a little bit more of the Billy Hamilton, D. Gordon era of stolen base specialists.
That predated Bourne.
Is it? No. Is it? No, I feel like those guys were after
D. Gordon. Yeah. Okay. You're probably right.
I don't think we're going to get any power out of Esteury Ruiz. Like, maybe it's like 5 to 7 home runs, but the steals are legit. His average exit velocity is terrible, but according to Fangraphs, he does hit a lot of line drives, 25%. So that's a really good number for a guy that's going to steal a lot of bases.
So hopefully, Michael Bourne was like 2010. Yeah, D. Gordon and Billy Hamilton related that. I mean, Billy Hamilton's still playing now.
I have someone that asks me pretty often, like, if they should pick up Billy Hamilton in an AL only league. If you need steals, sure, why not? I don't think he's going to play very much or give you anything outside of, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 steals. The call to the bullpen, a few updates there for Tampa Bay. Jason Adam allowed a hit, but struck out 3 more. He picked up his 4th save and is 46% rostered. Not really sure where this Pete Fairbanks forearm injury is, but man, like, Jason Adam looks really, really good. So if you have Fairbanks on your team, I would make sure to get Jason Adam as well.
It sounds like Fairbanks could be gearing up to return. I saw an update today. He played catch on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it looks like this RotoWire update was speculating that means he's close to maybe going on a rehab assignment. So it's still unknown, but it's not like he's shut down.
All right. For the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley recorded the final 4 outs for his 4th save. And for the Angels, Carlos Estevez struck out 1 for his 8th save. And all of a sudden, his numbers look ridiculously good. We're talking a low 1 ERA, a sub 1 whip, and Estevez has looked really
They
good.
knew it all along.
They did. Let's wrap up with to stream or not to stream, Scott. And we'll start with Tuesday here. Looking up and down the list. Jameson, Tyone, no. Brandon Pfaadt versus the Marlins. I think I can get behind that one.
Yeah, but there were a couple when we did this yesterday that I liked more. I liked Andrew Heaney at Seattle more, and I liked Louis Varland against the Padres more, even though that's a tougher matchup.
Yeah, it is.
What have we been saying all show, Frank?
Matchups don't matter. All right, so Varland, Pfaadt, and Heaney. I don't know if I want to trust Luis Ortiz in his first start, but the Rockies on the road, it's not terrible. On Wednesday, taking a look here, Rich Hill versus the Rockies on the road. I think that's potential. Peyton Battenfield up against the Tigers, though the Tigers have been hitting. Josiah Gray at the Giants. I think that's probably my favorite.
I think I'd take Edward Cabrera at Arizona as my number one choice for Wednesday.
Diamondbacks are good, though, Scott.
Hmm.
But
what have we been saying?
That's so matter. So there you go.
I mean, as long as he doesn't walk when he doesn't walk everybody, Edward Cabrera's great.
All right, here are my official 3 picks. Josiah Gray, Edward Cabrera, Seth Lugo at the Twins. He's actually pitched well this year. And if you're in a deeper league or desperate, I think Battenfield and Rich Hill are okay. Let's wrap up with Team Name Tuesday. This is from an Apple Podcast review from Mike. Mr. Heaney, the Christmas Pooh.
So is that South Park?
That is South Park indeed.
Okay.
Dr. Turk Torkelson. I think is that like Scrubs or something?
I think so.
Yeah. And then the last one, stop looking at me, Quan. I think it's a line from, is it Billy Madison? Stop looking at me, Swan. I think it's Billy Madison. It's
okay. I mean, that's in your wheelhouse then.
Yeah. Well, this person actually included where they're all from in the Apple Podcast review, but I don't like to write them down because I don't want you to know where they're from.
Okay.
I like to keep.
I have not seen Billy Madison before. That's one I've.
What? God, how can we do a podcast together and you haven't seen Billy Madison?
Yeah. No. Sorry.
Right.
I have not made a point to watch Adam Sandler's entire catalog. Sorry. I've seen quite a few of them, but not that one.
I haven't seen his entire catalog. Anything after, I don't know, like Click or Chuck and Larry, I probably haven't seen. These next 2 are from Dave. Never trust a fart. It's like never trust a fart.
Is that something people say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I fought when I'm nervous. There's a lot of Brandon Pfaadt ones today.
Probably not the best use of Pfaadt's name, which, by the way, I think we're pronouncing it wrong slightly. It's fought, not
I think you're right about that. It kind of sounds like the word thought.
Yeah, like I fought the law and the law won.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that, actually, because I remember hearing it. And I'm like, they were saying it wrong. This was from Neil. Can't buy me love.
Okay.
Grotians of the Galaxy.
Boy, Grotians makes an appearance. Okay.
I don't walk it, do your birdie work. Oh, yeah. Hunter Weathers.
Like gatherers, but
Hunter.
It's a stretch.
Gatherers. Okay. Freddie Player Quan.
Like that visually doesn't connect for me, but when you say it out loud, I get it. Okay.
Did you see the movie? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's not good.
Not good.
Not a fan.
The last
I have objections to it.
The last one from Neil is Mervis of Steel.
Cool.
From Eric. Funk Soul Brother Tyler Glass now. That's
okay. That works.
Thought's what she said.
Yeah.
All right. From Scott, not Scott White. Love is a Battenfield.
All right.
So from Alex, Vinny P, baby. Vinny P, baby. Not bad. From Bro, Strand by me. Strand by your man.
Okay.
Don't strand so close to me.
I mean, it's only half the guy's name, but
right. And then he said, I know I missed Star Wars Day, but it was too funny not to send it to you guys. Scott will probably hate it, but Otani Juan Kanobe.
Otani.
Uh,
Otani, like
Obi-Wan
yeah,
Kenobi. Otani.
right. But
Juan.
Otani adds too many syllables.
Yeah, it does.
I don't like it. You're right.
I like the ones that are so bad that they're good. It's kind of like the John Sterling effect for me.
It's the Heath Cummings special.
From Byron, Mervis Laughter.
Okay.
And Mervis Wreck. Actually, there's
Yeah.
a lot of Mervis ones here. Mervis.
I never thought about him as a stand-in for Nervous.
Yeah. Mervis
I was
Breakdown.
thinking. Okay.
Don't be a Mervis Melly.
Okay.
Never Nervous Mervis.
All right.
Mervis as a bat.
Yeah.
And Bundle of Mervs.
So never nervous Mervis. See, I have made the Purvis Ellison connection, and that was one of Purvis Ellison's nicknames, right? Never nervous Purvis.
That's actually exactly what Byron pointed out as well.
Yeah.
Yep. From Andrew, Bladayman, Fighter of the Night, Manoa. I think this is from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like Dayman,
Okay.
Fighter of the Night, man. Something like that.
I've seen just very, very few scattered episodes of that show. So
From Dan, Sheets Burger, Hap Emilio. Is this some kind of like Happy Meal? Sheets Burger, Happy Emilio? Hap Emilio. Happy Meal?
it's no good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Boo.
Did you fought? What's the odor? What's that odor?
Gosh. This is what we've descended to.
Yeah.
It's like an Adam Sandler movie.
For sure, 100%. From Grizz, you say Manaya, I say Manoa.
All right.
From Michael, it smells like fought.
You know, I kind of like that last one because you say it's like you say Kikuchi. Like you may not hear that, but visually it has 3 names in there and it actually works.
Yes, it does. And this last one is from Justin, 8-pound, 6-ounce, Baby Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.